I do this thing where it's kind of meta. I examine, and I think it's a healthy thing to do. I think all of us who use AI should probably try to do this. But I don't do it as intentionally as I probably should. And so I wanted to have this as like a public conversation. I examine my thoughts on how I use AI and my patterns and my habits and my feelings when I talk to AI. Talk to Claude, talk to ChatGPT. Those are the two that I used, and I think it's a good thing. I think it's a healthy thing. But I've also noticed I've developed some really weird tendencies, and I know I don't see anybody like actually talking about this. And this is the thing that I'm personally interested in a big way, or one of the things I'm interested in a big way, because I think in a lot of ways we can have tons of different opinions on AI and like how it should be used and all of the ethical quandaries that come with it. But I think that if we choose to use AI in a big way, we kind of have to take on the responsibility of supporting ourselves in healthy patterns of use. And that's not something that these companies are going to do for us because they profit in a big way from our unhealthy use. Um, Even if those patterns are maybe not as unhealthy as others that we have seen publicly in the media. Um, they benefit from our attachment to these chatbots and interfaces. And so I wanted to publicly examine this. And I would love to hear your thoughts about like whether you've noticed the same feelings, different feelings. Yeah, I'm curious. So, the first thing that I noticed with myself, and it's not good because I think what it does is it means that I run up my usage limits and my tokens very quickly. And that causes me to run into like my usage limits and have to wait. And now, this is not always the case. Especially when I'm like doing something that I know exactly what I want. But when I'm brainstorming, when I'm ideating, and when I'm building, and when I say building, I'm really talking about vibe coding, and I am talking about the systems that I'm building in my business. And when I am building those systems, because Chelsea does not have the knowledge and the full on know how. I don't have the education of a software developer or a developer of any kind or an engineer of any kind. And though I am a systems thinker, my systems training is not in software and digital systems, it's in human systems, things like biology, chemistry, and physics, not bits and tokens and code. So, what that then tends to mean is I don't know what I don't know, and therefore I don't want to miss anything that I should not be missing. What does that lead to? That leads to Chelsea not giving Claude or ChatGPT any explicit instructions about how she wants the output formatted. And we all know that that is one of the key things when prompting these systems efficiently and effectively, is that you need to tell it how you want it to output what you want it to output. So I will either specifically not tell it that, or I'll do the other thing, which tells it to output as many options as possible. So instead of saying like narrow this down to 3 bullet points and just be as concise as possible, I will tell it give me 12 bullet points, and I want variations on all of these things, and I want you to look across fields and across disciplines and bruh, I've got serious FOMO. The FOMO is high. I do not want to miss anything that will enable me to build more efficiently. And because I don't know the questions to ask, I ask it to give me as much as possible. And we all know that AI gives a lot of slop sometimes. Like Claude will tell you, and Claude is a chatty little miss, ma'am, sir, whatever gender you want to give it, whatever gender your Claude is. Claude is chat. Claude is very verbose. Yes. And so what that ends up meaning is Chelsea gets long paragraphs. Like, I mean, long paragraphs of explanations. And keep in mind, Chelsea is learning French. So what does that mean? These explanations are in French and in English because I have instructed Claude to say, sir, here's what I need from you. I need every single output to be both in French and in English because I want some kind of French input on a day to day basis. Even if it's just I read 2 sentences in French today, that is enough at this point because I haven't developed a system that actually feels good for me yet. And y'all, French is, side note, French is the worst, one of the worst, I think. Maybe not the absolute worst. It's not the absolute worst, obviously, because there are tons of different languages in the world. So I am just being extra and and overly dramatic, acknowledged. See. But because it's the language that I am learning right now, and keep in mind, I want to be a polyglot. I have a long list of like 10 languages from all of the different continents that I want to learn. And actually, I think it's like 12 now. I think it's like 12 or 14, actually. 14 different languages. And so, what that means is that I figured I would start with the languages that I'm already familiar with. And I'm already familiar with French and Spanish because I did those in high school. And so, I'm like, okay, French first, because it's the one I started after Spanish. It's the one that's not as much intuitive to me because I studied Spanish for 7 years. Yeah, all of high school in Jamaica. But French, I only studied for what? Five? Five? Five, yes. Um, and so it's not as intuitive as Spanish is. I've got 2 extra years in Spanish. And what that then means is I need to have a system to refamiliarize myself with the language. I low key wish I had saved my French textbooks and Spanish textbooks, and I feel like maybe I did, but I have no idea where to look in my house for them. So that is a low key problem. Because man, those textbooks for I don't business about vocabulary. Chelsea will memorize vocabulary all day. I will learn vocabulary. But the conjugations, I need to get, to me, conjugations are like math. And I need to get the math intuitively into my system. All of the tenses, the subjunctif, le, le passé composé. Like I need to get all of those tenses into my brain and my body and like intuitive to me. And I need the rote exercises. I need the grammar, like fill in the blanks. I need the things. And right now I don't have them. Maybe I need to like find a high school syllabus and look at the textbooks, see if I recognize them, and if I do, go buy them. Maybe that would be helpful. In any case, all of this to say, I don't have a system yet that really works to refamiliarize myself with these languages. And so I'm looking for input in whatever way I can get it. And the easiest possible input that would really work for me is TV and movies. It's story, right? And I really want audio input and speaking practice because even though I am a reader and a lover of words, my primary goal for learning languages is to be able to speak to people. I do not care if I can produce, or at least I do care, but it's like secondary, if I can produce like all the grammar rules and all of those things, that has fallen down the list of priorities. I need to be able to communicate to a native speaker and be heard, understood, and responded to um, at a level that is efficient, not just for daily use, but really what I want to use language learning to explore in my life. As this is just like I'm just telling you my life goals about language learning. So like tangent. We're fully falling down this rabbit hole now. Didn't mean to, but here we are. Like really what I want to use language to explore is the human condition, and specifically the human condition around I think the things that we struggle with in terms of work and productivity and relationships. So things like perfectionism, things like people pleasing, things like how we like self judgment and self critique and the inner critic voices. I want to learn how those things show up and why those things show up the way they show up in other languages and other cultures. And so I then need to be able to talk about those things, right? And I need to have language to be able to talk about those things. So it's not just like ordering a croissant in a bakery. It's not just that, right? And so what that then means is your girl needs like proper input and a solid foundation in the language, at the very least, at the level of speaking and at the level of hearing the language. And so the easiest thing for me would be stories, movies, TV. But I also have the problem where my interests are very niche and different when it comes to watching movies and TV. And so there I have not found a series that I can thoroughly enjoy in French. And I have looked. I really wish the K dramas and the C dramas were translated, like were dubbed in French, but a lot of them, most of them are not. And so it's just like, the ones I want to watch are not. It's a rough life out here. Crash Landing on You is. So I started watching that, but because I've watched the entire series before, wait, is Crash Landing on You dubbed in French? I'm pretty sure it is on Netflix. I remember it being so. I feel like I started watching it in French. So yeah, because I've watched the whole series before, I have, and Crash Landing on You is a journey. If you have not watched it, it is a whole. It puts the drama in drama. It's great show. Adored it. It do be putting the drama in drama, and so because depending on where I'm at in my life, I might not be into all of that drama right now, which I'm not. And so it means that I haven't gone back to binging Crash Landing on You, which means I haven't gotten the sound of the language in my system in a really big way. And so I'm like, okay, taking us back to Claude now. I'm like, all right, I need some kind of French input. So, sir, whenever you talk to me in French and in English. And sometimes with my requests and with my FOMO of not wanting to miss anything, this becomes too much for Claude. And Sir just only gives me the French. So it's a great workout for my brain, because then I have to translate, right? Then I have to understand what the heck it's saying in French. But depending on how tired my brain is that day, it also very much means that I'll be like, redo this output and hit the refresh button. Or I will literally just type, hey, this was all in French. Can you give me the English translations for all of this, please? I don't do that often. Most of the time, I'll just reset it. And if I'm really, really lazy and I'm not doing anything work related, I'll just try and read it in French. So it's a good workout. It's good practice. It's a good opportunity to get input into my brain. However, that and my FOMO make it really, really easy for me to run up and go and like hit my usage limits every time I use Claude, especially when I'm using Claude for the systems that I'm building in my business. And so I don't have any solutions on how to get over this FOMO, because I do find, especially when I am brainstorming, I don't feel like I feel this strongly when I'm vibe coding and when I'm building it, because I still don't really know these sort of principles that underpin what I am doing. I am intuitively kind of getting a sense of things, but because I have not learned coding or learned software engineering or even learned the basic principles yet, I have plans to learn that, but I have not pursued learning those things yet. What that then means is I don't actually know what I'm missing and not missing until I try out the workflow and it doesn't work. So I haven't necessarily found that um, I haven't found this sort of way of prompting, this ineffective way of prompting, supportive to me in when I'm building yet. But what I have seen it support me in is brainstorming and ideating and compiling an argument and learning when I'm learning a fact about the world. Because here's what happens. there's usually an angle I haven't considered or a perspective that I haven't taken into account. And I will usually have a ton of questions in a specific direction. So I'll spit all the questions at Claude. It'll start to answer those questions, and then you know how it asks the question at the end, do you want me to, or what do you think about, or what direction do you want to go next, or how does that feel for you? Whatever question it asks at the end, it will normally present a different perspective in that question, or in its analysis of the answers to my questions, it will present a new perspective that I have not yet thought of. And I am hesitant to then tell it how to output what it is giving me, because I do not want to miss that perspective. Now, as I am saying this out loud, it occurs to me that I can always say, hey, include different perspectives in your output. I can give that as an instruction instead of like being I don't want to use the word afraid, because fear feels like too strong a word, but just being hesitant to be specific in my instructions and my prompting on how it needs to output what it's giving me. Um, it occurs to me that I can just do that. But I think it's also laziness. And this is, I think, the second thing that I notice coming up in myself. And it's laziness in two ways. Laziness in the first way of like, I am not putting in the effort to properly prompt Claude to give me what I need, especially when I'm not working. Especially when I'm like learning for life. So, for example, I am researching something about politics in the US, or I'm researching something about politics in Jamaica, or I'm researching something about the latest news in climate change, or whatever I'm researching that day and I'm just curious about and have questions on. I will be very lazy with the way I prompt it, because I'm literally just trying to get information and to formulate like I thought, like, what are my thoughts on this? What's my perspective on this? And so what that then means is I don't practice my prompting skills. And I know I can do better at this. And I have the skills to do better at this, but I don't use them. Because I'm lazy. And I know that it will do a good enough job of giving me what I need anyway. And I don't know if that's so great. I don't know if that's so great, because what it then means is I'm not engaging my brain when I'm using this tool to its maximum potential, even though I'm engaging it to think through the answers that it's giving me and the perspective that it's sharing with me. I am not engaging my brain to actually work through pulling the best out of this tool, this really powerful, really helpful tool. I'm just using it in a bare minimum kind of way, especially when I'm not working. And so I don't think that's particularly helpful for myself long term, but it's a reality. And then the second way that I find myself being lazy with this, which is the more dangerous way, I think, the more dangerous habit and default that I am forming, that I'm calling myself out on and need to cut out, is that I will find myself in positions where I will not take action on a task if AI will not help me with it. And what I mean is, if I don't have some kind of workflow in Claude or some kind of custom GPT or something to support me in the doing of the task, I delay in exercising my skills to do the task myself. Prime example, social media. I am running my business. I need to be posting on Instagram. Instagram has been historically where I get a significant number of my leads. I'm posting now on YouTube, which is great, but my Instagram like main feed has been ghosted for several months. I think the last time I posted was maybe February. And I'm saying a lot of really cool, interesting things over here that I would love to share over on Instagram. Guess who has not created an Instagram carousel on any of her YouTube content, even though she is very well versed and very skilled in repurposing content? This girl. Why is that the case? Because Chelsea has been busy, head down, building systems for other things in her business and has not set aside the time to build the workflow that will help her to do this. And so she hasn't touched it at all. Now, to be fair to myself, that is understandable because carousels take me a long time to make typically. Unfortunately, that is just the case. My workflow when it comes to creating carousels and creating Instagram content in general is it takes a while. It just does. It might take me like anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour to create a carousel. And so it's a significant chunk of my time, especially when I'm like, right, I did this video 2 weeks ago. I don't have any idea what I said. So I need to like search through the transcript, find the key points that I want to bring out and the key things that I would want to make carousels on. And let's say I want to make like 3 carousels out of this video. I need to think through like all the positioning angles, all of the hooks, all of the core topics that I want to talk about, and then go like write the captions and then go into Canva and make all the carousels. So that could very easily take me 3 hours, 1 hour for each post. And I know how I work. So I absolutely could create these workflows for myself. But because I have other priorities right now, the workflows have not been completed or started even. And therefore, Chelsea has not posted on Instagram. Because, and to be fair to myself, I don't think this is just laziness. I think it's like other priorities coming into play in the business. But it's jeopardizing my lead generation, right? Because like historically, that's been where most of it has come from. So it's it's in that respect, I have to question that habit, even if it's not as lazy as I think on the surface, right? Like if the adjective that I prescribe to this is lazy, the deeper reason beneath it needs to be questioned. And I don't think it's just plain laziness, but I do think the habit of not doing something because AI can't help me with it is not a good habit to develop. And I do this too with reels. Like I have so many videos now that I can pull reels from, but I do not have an AI tool that I am happy with the reels that it generates automatically from long form videos. I have found one, but it's still being built. They've introduced like the beta and they're giving people access to it for free. I think it's called Cutform. Yeah, that's the one I like the best because it actually stitches together like sections from the entire arc of the video to create like smaller ideas and smaller arcs of messaging within the larger arc of the video. All of the other platforms that I found, Descript, Opus Clips, all of the other ones, they don't do that well. They just pull out a section and it's just like, okay, this is just a section. There's no like through line here. There's no cohesiveness. There's no sort of understanding of what a hook is, what a core idea is, threading them together and leading to something else. There's no thought process around that. At least not in my experience. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you have a better way of using Opus Clip or I think it's called Opus Clips, right? Or Descript in the comments, like help you girl. Happy to be supported in that. But right now, because I don't have an AI tool that does it exactly the way I like, none of my content from YouTube is getting repurposed. And I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's good because what it suggests to me is that the skills that I currently have acquired, I am not using if those skills cannot be supplemented by AI. What kind of what kind of wild ass behavior is that? That's wild ass behavior. To me, that is wild in the sense that Chelsea, you know how to do the thing. Just prioritize taking the action. Like, why are you gonna sit on here and wait to be coddled? Use your skill set, ma'am. Anyways, that's another unhealthy habit that I think I need to work on. Yes. So that's habit number 2, trend number 2 that I'm noticing in my relationship with AI. And going back to the FOMO for a moment, I also want to say that not the FOMO in not prompting it correctly in terms of like, or not prompting it efficiently in terms of how I want it to output the information that it's giving me. As I said, this is especially when I am not working on something and I am learning new things or brainstorming an idea or finding out new information, and I'm like coalescing it into a perspective for myself. And what I find is that I also notice that um, AI has a really unique way of giving you the exact right words that maybe you did not find to communicate what you are trying to communicate. And it doesn't always do a good job at this at all. It's a really 50-50 on this, okay? Hear me. I am not saying that AI gets it right because it does not. But I am saying that there are moments where it does. And when it does, it, y'all, words are a thing for me. I choose my words very, very carefully as much as I can. And so when I find the exact right word to say and communicate what I'm trying to communicate, and not just communicate the meaning, but give you a sort of mental sense and image and context for what, like the texture of the word, the palette of the word. How does the word feel? How does the word look? Like, we have associations with words in a particular language. We have associations with how words feel, the context that words evoke. And I choose words intuitively with those things in mind. And so when AI, like when Claude gives me back a word that I did not think of myself, but that evokes the context and the palette of meaning and the sense that I'm trying to create, I'm like, ooh, yes, we're keeping that. And I do not want to lose that. But again, I could probably prompt for that, right? I could probably be explicit enough in my prompt to say, hey, can you do this? Um, Give me options for expressing, give me different options of words I can use to express this idea and thought. Again, figuring this out live with y'all. Fun times. So yeah, that's the sort of like second trend I am noticing in my habits with AI that I don't think will serve me in the long run and are healthy in terms of really continuing to use my brain and my skill sets that I've acquired over time. The third thing that I think is coming up for me, and this is less of a habit and more of a trend that I'm seeing in myself, and I think it's actually moving me in a really positive direction. Still to figure out what that direction actually looks like, but I do believe it's moving me in a really good direction. And this is the and it piggybacks off of my earlier that second trend that I brought up, in the sense that when I am researching politics or climate change or really looking into how systems interact with one another. So, for example, how capitalism interacts with politics, like in the US, and when thinking about the elections, who is bankrolling the current president? Who gave money to what PAC that supported his election, his campaign, right? Like, what large tech companies sponsored him? And I'm thinking through the ripple effects and the sort of industries that those tech companies touch. And then I'm thinking about how this affects my personal life with the things and the products that I buy and I support, and even the things I invest my money in, right? I'm talking about stocks. So like the S&P 500 and those kinds of like ETFs and like looking into all of those things and index funds, like paying attention and drawing connections across industries and entire systems of the systems that run our lives. When I'm doing that kind of thing, I really find myself thinking through these things with Claude in a very like I'm having really prolonged conversations. Whenever I watch an interview, like I did a video a while back on that interview that Stephen Bartlett did with Karen Howe on Diary of a CEO. I'll like drop the video at the end of this video so you guys can go watch that if you want. And I spent probably an extra, the video itself took the interview itself was like a 2 hour video. I think I watched it on either 1.8x speed or 2x speed. So it took me about an hour to an hour and a half to watch. And I stayed up for probably another hour and a half to 2 hours talking through Claude on what I learned, trying to understand, researching and understanding the reality of the situation, things, facts that I had not encountered, and integrating those perspectives into my current perspectives, examining how I'm changing how I think about these things, right? And I'm having these hella dang long conversations with Claude, and I'm coming into this sort of learning process and realizing, oh, what I do not want, and I feel this impulse in me every single time. I do not want to be siloed in my thinking. I need outside perspectives, which means I need human perspectives. And I find myself in those moments every single time wanting human conversation. And I think that's a really good thing. I actually think that's a really, really positive thing. I don't want to be sitting here and going on with Claude about these things. This is not, that doesn't do it for me. I want to hear what other people think. I want to hear other people's thoughts and perspectives and experiences. I want to hear how they are thinking about these things, because their context informs so much of the conclusions that they've drawn. Like, for example, again, in another video, I think actually it's a video I did yesterday, where I was talking about how I was speaking with one of my best friends, and she was sharing with me that while integrating AI tools into our offers can be really unhelpful to students, in the sense that they no longer earn, or rather own, their knowledge and their like process of producing the result, because they don't learn the framework, the methodology, the skill set that it takes to produce that result, because the AI tool does it for them, right? One of the pros that she pointed out that I didn't think about, that Claude did not come up with when we brainstormed this, was that people can't copy your stuff, because your framework and your methodology is not just there in your lessons and available for people to copy. And I never would have thought of that, because I don't get copied, but she does all the time. In her industry, people copy her stuff so freaking often. It's ridiculous and so, like, so blatant. It's like, you're not even hiding anymore, bro. What? How does this work for you? Because all you're gonna do is get slapped with a cease and desist from my lawyers, and you know this. I've spoken publicly about this before. How do you think you're gonna get away with this? Like, that I'm speaking as my friend now. Like, I agree with her. I don't know how they're so barefaced about it, but my point being, Claude didn't bring that up for me. She did. And the value of those human perspectives and those human ideas and those human experiences cannot be overstated. And I want more human conversations on this stuff. I don't want less. And I don't want to actually be sitting in Claude at 2, 3 a.m. talking about this stuff. That is not my desire. And I think that having the conversation with Claude and doing that so often, and every single time it bringing up that desire in me, is a really good thing. And I love that. I really love that. Now all I have to do is act on it. So side note, if anybody wants to have like a bi-weekly or monthly conversation on state of the world, drop your thoughts in the comments, because I think that's something that I would love to have. Just like a group of smart, really interesting and invested people talking about intersections across industries and cultures and the systems that run our lives, and how we are making decisions in light of those intersections. That's what I'm interested in. So yeah, I think that is a really good thing that's come out of my my interactions and behaviors, and the things that the sort of impulse responses in the way that I use ChatGPT and Claude. I think a couple other things are coming up for me that I notice about myself. And these are things that I really appreciate in the way that I use these tools. And I wanted to share them with you. And the way that I think about what I'm doing here is a sort of habit stacking situation. For those of you who don't know about habit stacking yet, which I don't know how you get away with not knowing about it yet. But basically, the way that I think about habit stacking is that one thing that's a part of your routine becomes a signal and an impulse to do the other thing. So this morning, for example, I brushed my teeth, I washed my face, and those two actions are a signal for me to put on moisturizer. And I had deliberately said that I was not going to wear my moisturizer today. Stupid decision, I know. I don't know why I was thinking that. Maybe because it's hot. It's getting hot here in Jamaica, and a film of stuff on your skin does mean a very pleasant, perspiring glow, let's say. So maybe that's why I had decided that I wasn't going to do that this morning. But what did Chelsea find herself doing? Walking to her vanity, opening her moisturizer, and putting it on her face, even though she just decided she wasn't going to do it. Why? Because the habit is now stacked. Brush teeth, wash face, moisturizer. There, one is automatically a signal for the next one, especially at a certain time of day, right? And so the way that I use this in how I talk to Claude is if I am in the process of trying to make a decision and I'm talking through or rather I come to a point where I need to make a decision. So I've talked through my thoughts with Claude, I've brainstormed everything, I've kind of thought through pros, cons, etc. And I now need to decide instead of continuing the conversation with Claude, which would be the path of least resistance. It would be the easiest path to take to continue talking through like how I make this decision and what I am actually thinking to decide and why. I stop and take it as a signal to go talk to a human being about this decision. I usually take it as a signal to go engage with humanity, engage with the people that know me, care about me, and love me, and can give me human perspectives on this decision and can help me check my thoughts in a way that a chatbot that only has like digital neural networks cannot. And so I think that's a really powerful practice that I am really, really starting to form a habit around in my life. I find myself doing this more and more often, and it's something that I want to continue. I think the next thing that I have started doing that is very helpful is coming up with the full arc of a thought before going to Claude. I used to stop halfway. I used to give Claude my half-brained ideas. And then we would like brainstorm the complete arc together. I've stopped doing that mostly because of studies I've read and heard about, quite frankly. But I think the act of using my own brain to come up with a full thought and then taking it to Claude or ChatGPT and saying, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What angles have I not considered? How could I improve this? This is the goal and the outcome that I want to achieve. What could I change to better achieve that output? Like taking the full arc of the idea to Claude, to ChatGPT and asking for its input is a better approach because then I get to use my own brain, right? Then I get to exercise the neural connections in my brain. I get to even potentially make new connections in my brain. And I mean, jumping back for a second to like using Claude and ChatGPT to do research and looking at the intersections of different systems and industries and things like that run our lives. I could absolutely do that research manually, and that would also be using my brain. I think usually what happens is I don't have a lot of time to do that research. So I'd rather use my brain power to absorb and make connections with the information rather than searching out the information. Feel free to challenge my thinking on that in the comments. What are the pros of doing the research yourself? I would love to hear more on that. I haven't considered that before, and this question just like pops up inside me. My curiosity on in full force right now. So please, if you have pros around like what's the pro of doing the research yourself, taking us back to the days of like actually doing Google research, or better yet, going to the library, finding an encyclopedia on the topic and reading the encyclopedia. y'all remember Britannica? Encyclopedia Britannica? Did anybody use like Britannica encyclopedias? I had to use an encyclopedia once in elementary school, primary school here in Jamaica, to do a project on the skeleton and the bones of the skeleton. Y'all, I remember it being a really engaging experience to use the encyclopedia, but also very tiring because it's a lot of information. In any case, I want to hear your thoughts on that. So if you have any interesting perspectives or any perspective at all on actually the pros of doing the research yourself instead of handing it to Claude or ChatGPT and saying, hey, do a deep research project on this and give me a report, I'd be interested to hear more about that. But yeah, I think coming up with my own ideas on this stuff um, is really, really like helpful for my brain to exercise the connected neurons that I already have, and the pathways that I have already created in my mind, and to potentially create new ones. Because I know that like as you grow older, it's harder to create new neuronal pathways and create faster connections. And so the more I can do that kind of thing myself, the better for me. And I think another thing, the third thing and final thing that I think is really, really good for me that I've started to do is cut myself off from the validation seeking with this AI. Because what I was finding myself doing was discussing an idea with Claude, brainstorming it, thinking through the whole thing, and then looking for Claude to say to me, this is a great idea. This is very different and very new, and I love this for you. Like the affirmation that the AI gives, that I think that's what people mean by like that sycophantic nature. But like certain models, of course, take it to the extreme, and depending on how you train the model, it can also take it to the extreme, and not just like validating the idea, but validating you as a person. And you start to feel real good talking to these models when they are not human. People pleasing is bad enough when it's human to human, much less human to AI model. Bro, the wildness. What era are we living in where people pleasing now becomes AI pleasing? where we're demonstrating validation seeking behavior towards our chatbots. Deep breath. We live in a wild time. But yeah, I think that like me cutting off that validation, realizing, and I think the reason why I stopped, why I intentionally stopped looking for that is because I'd be tempted to continue the conversation and say, Claude, give me your feedback, when we've already discussed the whole thing, and I know it's a good idea. I love this idea. So like, I'm gonna run with the idea. I don't need a chatbot to tell me it's a good idea. If anything, a human telling me it's a good idea would be better. So let me go find a human being. And this side note, y'all, this is the kind of conundrum that I am referring to when I say things like, it's so wild to me that we interact with these chatbots like we do human beings, and they are not human beings. And I think that it has ushered in a new sort of relationship, because the only, think about it, in all of human development, the only things in the world that talked back to us was us. Like we were the only ones that talked to each other, especially in this sort of native flowing speech pattern, right? Natural language, how you would hold a conversation. We've only ever been really able to hold a conversation with one another, accessible to everyone without training. I'm not talking about learning coding language like C plus and Python and all those things, right? I'm talking about speaking in your native language as a human to another human being, not having to think about or phrase or try too hard, and having that human being respond to you and holding a conversation for a solid 15, 20, 30 minutes to an hour or more. The only being, thing that has been able to do that is us. We can't talk to animals. We can't talk to computers like that. Like that does not exist until now. And that is, I think that will fundamentally change the way that we relate to the world and to one another in ways that we do not know yet. And I think it's because it's so unassuming, because it's just a regular old conversation, it doesn't feel threatening. But when we think about the fact that in all of our development, we've only related to one another in this way, and now we're relating to something that is not human in a human way, I think there are repercussions that we're not yet considering. And so, all of that to say that I think that me stopping myself from relating to this chatbot in a uniquely human way, specifically in terms of seeking validation and seeking affirmation, is something that I don't need to train myself to find from a chatbot. I can train that myself to find that from Jesus. I can train myself to find that from myself. And I can train myself to find that affirmation and validation from people who are safe for me. I do not want to train myself to find that validation and affirmation from Claude or ChatGPT. And so I've stopped myself. And I like that for me. It's still an impulse that I'm training because I still feel the desire to be like, what do you think? Because again, it's how I started interacting with this thing. That was the trend. That was the way that I was going until maybe like a couple months ago. I was like, hang tight. I don't need to do that. No, we refuse. We're not doing that anymore. We're done. So I think that the opportunity to, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have seen that pattern in myself and have stopped it. And I think it's really supportive and healthy for me. So in these last three things, I find that AI is actually driving me more towards humanity. And I think that's a very healthy thing. The first two we need to work on. And I think that something that I didn't say in yesterday's video that I want to say here is that we, as much as possible, I think now more than ever, have the opportunity to inject humanity in whatever we do. Whether we are coaches, consultants, service providers for or businesses, and we are working with students and clients, and we put AI tools inside our offers, don't remove the human element out of it. Include opportunities in, for example, your chatbots for a case to be escalated to a human being. Even if it takes you longer to answer, even if you calibrate expectations to say, hey, y'all, we have a high volume of these requests that get escalated. And so you're not going to hear back from us until probably like a week's time, but we will get back to you. In the meantime, here are some resources and here are things you can do. Like, still keep the human element as a part of your offers and systems. Keep the human element as a part of your brainstorming process, as a part of your innovation and your creation. Keep the human element as a part of your perspective shifts and your thinking and the way that you work in the world. Don't just, because it's so easy to default to these chatbots, because they're so easy to use, because they have, in a lot of ways, I'm going to use a strong word here, they have hijacked or natural ways of relating to one another and have turned those habits toward themselves. And so it's really easy to use them. It's really easy to let Claude and ChatGPT become replacements for human beings. Let the APIs become replacements for us as coaches and service providers inside of our programs. And while that is helpful and effective in some cases, especially when people want DIY, it is not helpful and effective for us as human beings. That is my perspective. That is my stance on that. And so I don't think that, well, let me phrase it another way. I think now more than ever, we need to make every single effort that we can to integrate humanity into our work and into our lives. And I think that even in the way that we relate to one another, it shows up, and it can be really sneaky if we're not intentional about turning ourselves towards one another and not just defaulting to the chatbot every single time. All right, y'all. So those are kind of the things that I'm noticing with myself and things that are working for me and things that I still need to work on. This sort of meta kind of look at how I use these chatbots and examining my own perspectives and examining my own habits and the things that I want to work on and improve. So hopefully this was interesting and helpful for you. I'd love to hear about your own habits and like trends that you're noticing in yourself, maybe specific decisions that you have made around how you use chatbots these days. I'd love to hear your answer to that research question if you have one as well. So the comments are open. My DMs are open. The link to my DMs is in the description box below. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.